Hi, it's Gita, and this is Swamp Watch for the week of January 27th through February 2nd, 2025. Well, the government is chugging right along. Most of the finalized actions this week were in the executive branch. SCOTUS has some major cases pending, though, and we might start to get some rulings this week or next week. And both houses of Congress have also been busy introducing new legislation, and hearings are still ongoing in the Senate for presidential appointees. But since most of the actual actions that were finalized were on the executive front, let's take a quick look at how these actions align with President Trump's 14 things that he promised to do on day one. Delay the TikTok ban, pull out of the Paris Climate Agreement, and pardon January 6 rioters. Done and done and done. There are a couple of things that haven't really been started in any material way yet. Some of these have an executive order that says, repeats the promise, but no concrete actions yet. So as far as guardrails on AI, getting rid of EVs, drill baby drill, and commercial fishing regulations, eliminating the tax on tips, that's all still waiting in the wings. On promises 9, 10, 11, and 12, there definitely has been progress. So first, making it easier to fire federal workers. That is something that was done by executive order earlier, and he is not sleeping on this promise. Firing of federal workers is well underway, with hundreds of thousands of federal employees already having received a buyout letter, and they have until Thursday, so 2 days from now, to decide if they're going to take that buyout or not. Trump has also been busy purging employees that have anything to do with DEI, including those that merely attended DEI trainings. The Department of Education has placed employees on administrative leave. 18 inspector generals have been terminated. Approximately 240 senior officials and people who had been involved in Trump investigations in Biden's term have been fired. U.S. aid employees have been locked out, and many fellowship positions and government contracts associated with the CDC and other health agencies have been put on leave or fired in response to suspension of funding for the foreign aid programs that they work on. Ending birthright citizenship. This one is going to be a really long saga. President Trump did try to end it by executive order. A temporary restraining order was immediately issued, which expires at the end of this week. While the restraining order was in place, 22 states filed lawsuits declaring ending birthright citizenship unconstitutional. And then this week, 3 separate judges will be holding hearings on whether to block the order this week. So this is going to be a long process. As far as the conflict in Ukraine, there has been progress on this front just in the last 48 hours, which is particularly important because Ukraine is losing ground in the war as they face logistical and weather challenges. On Friday, President Trump said he had begun talks with Russia, but refused to say whether he had spoken directly with Putin and wouldn't detail who in his administration had begun talks with Moscow, though he insisted the two sides were already talking and he had engaged in very serious discussions. Ukraine's President Zelensky then came a couple days later and said that they haven't been involved in any discussions to end the war and warned that it's dangerous for them to be excluded from talks. Then on Monday, President Donald Trump indicated that he wants to reach an agreement with Ukraine to gain access to the country's rare earth minerals in exchange for our continuing support, which is an idea President Zelensky floated himself back in October of 2024. So seems likely that that will be agreeable. All that to say that for the sake of the people of Ukraine, I sincerely hope an end to this war is in sight. Then finally, tariffs on Canada and Mexico, which he promised to do on day one, a 25% tariff. He pulled a bit of an Uno reverse here. On Saturday, he signed an order imposing the tariffs that were to take effect on Tuesday. Then on Monday, he said those tariffs would be delayed for 30 days, but he did go ahead and slap an additional 10% tariff on goods from China, which went into effect today. So I guess this is maybe halfway. Promise number 13 was to stop schools from teaching stuff that Trump doesn't like. My words, not his, but it was a lot of rambling word salad in this particular promise, which now has a name called Ending Radical Indoctrination in K through 12 Schooling. And we now know what he means when he said promise schools to stop teaching that radical stuff that he referred to during the campaign. Now, if you read this executive order, there's a very long list of things you can't do, including such diverse things as making the immoral, quote, making the immoral generalization that members of one race, color, sex, or national origin are morally or inherently superior to members of another race, color, sex, or national origin. You also cannot, quote, make the immoral generalization that virtues such as merit, excellence, hard work, fairness, neutrality, objectivity, and racial colorblindness are racist or sexist. You also can't sexually exploit minors. You can't unlawfully practice medicine in school. So it goes on. There's a long list of things. Now, I have 3 kids who were schooled in a blue state for half of their public school education and a red state for the other half, and I think most of what is written in this bill is inconsequential. I don't think schools, as a matter of policy, teach most of this stuff. It's possible, it's a big country, that there's some place where this sort of indoctrination is occurring, and if so, they won't get any funds. There's one particular clause, though, which I think is going to be very difficult to comply with. According to this executive order, you cannot teach that, and the quote is right here above. It makes the order makes it the immoral generalization that an individual's moral character or status as privileged, oppressing, or oppressed is primarily determined by the individual's race, color, sex, or national origin. That's the exact language. You cannot teach that. You cannot teach that any oppression or oppressing of somebody was related to their race, color, sex, or national origin. Now, I don't know how schools are going to teach about racial segregation and the civil rights movement. I don't know how they'll teach about women's fight for the right to vote, to own property, to be admitted to universities. Those are clear examples of oppression based on race or sex. Or what about the Irish ghettos, the Trail of Tears, Japanese internment camps in World War II? So those are a few more examples, and I'm not sure if the intent of this language is to sort of expunge troubling historical events from our curriculum, which seems antithetical to the point of teaching history. Is it to recast them as about being something other than discrimination? Is it just a poorly written executive order? Time will have to tell on this one. Promise number 14 was to begin mass deportations, and that has now begun. Thanks to Newsweek for compiling this data from ICE into a chart, which shows that arrests and detainers for undocumented immigrants are increasing day by day. This is not equal to deportations, though, which are estimated to be around 500 to 700 so far, and that doesn't include people who might have self-deported. That number, that estimate comes from the fact that Colombia sent its own plane to pick up about 200 deportees, and according to them, none of them had criminal records in either country. There have also been 3 military flights that I was able to find information about, which hold an estimated 80 to 85 passengers each, and those flights repatriated some deportees in January. Now, there have been fewer deportations in January than the average monthly totals in 2024, but the administration was changing over in January and repatriation agreements were still being negotiated. So I expect that this will ramp up, even though the number is smaller than you might have been expecting. An important thing to realize when we're talking about mass deportations is the sheer scale of this whole idea. At the rate that we're going right now, it'll take 28 years to deport the 11 million undocumented immigrants in the country. And of course, other people, new undocumented immigrants are coming all the time. Data released in December showed that there were at least 1,445,549 citizens from 208 different countries already awaiting removal across the U.S., with several thousand more being held in facilities across the country. So that means almost 1.5 million have orders to be removed, and they're at large still in the community. And then there's several thousand who are sitting in prisons and jails across the country. In its annual report for 2024, which is the last full year of Biden's presidency, ICE said it had removed 271,484 people, which is the most since 2019 when Donald Trump had his first term. So it'll take until the end of the year till we see how his immigration activities stack up against previous presidents. Since our last edition of Swamp Watch, there have also been a number of new cabinet confirmations. Sean Duffy was confirmed for Secretary of Transportation, and he had pretty much the worst first day ever because a few hours after his confirmation, there was a deadly crash at Washington's DCA airport. And Duffy is one of Trump's less qualified picks. He's a former MTV reality star and Fox News host. So it'll be really interesting to see how he handles the huge crisis brewing at the FAA. Software executive Doug Burgum was also confirmed for Secretary of Interior. Attorney Lee Zeldin was confirmed to head the EPA, which is not a cabinet-level position. Former hedge fund manager Scott Bessent was confirmed for the Secretary of Treasury role. And I think this will actually be interesting because Bessent has been a big advocate for deficit reduction. So I'll be curious to see how his policy recommendations line up against the huge amount of federal spending called for to support mass deportations and very expensive military programs that have been proposed, including the Iron Dome. Funding those projects will require, while reducing the deficit at the same time, would require extremely deep cuts in other areas. Thank you for watching Swamp Watch. Please like this video and subscribe to our channel to make sure you never miss a weekly update on what's going on in the swamp. For more political content, you can also find us on TikTok, Instagram, TikTok, Instagram, and Blue Sky at our handle, answerthequestion.tv.